true.
You believe our Buddhas are only men, just human beings.
Even a Buddha dies, like all men. He is not
You
the
are
creator.
ignorant. Andre, only a Christian would see Buddha simply as man.
Our Buddha is a being which man can become. Something greater than himself, if he can overcome all his illusions.
But you cling to your illusions.
Welcome to the Perfect Movie Podcast, the podcast where we answer the question, is this a perfect movie? I'm Michael.
I'm Kalen.
And it's Marty May, the month of the year where we watch Martin Scorsese movies. We're down to our last one. It is Silence, from a year that I'm looking up right now, 2016. So a pretty new one. Starring Adam Driver, Liam Neeson, Andrew Garfield, a lot of Japanese actors that I don't know and will struggle to read their names.
Yeah.
Silence. Kalen, what do you think about it? You just watched it for the first time, I believe.
I did. And, well, actually, not the first time. The first time I tried to watch it, I fell asleep during it. So at first I was like, oh, this is not a good sign. I knocked out while trying to watch this. But on second viewing, I found it to be really great. It's a much different film than most Martin Scorsese stuff. I feel like we say that a lot. We've been saying that a lot, but that's okay. This movie in particular is very different. It follows historical events. I don't know if these were real people or not. I don't know the full backstory behind it, but it's about the persecution of Christians in Japan. And it was very interesting because I didn't know a lot about the history. I didn't know that there was like a big group of missionaries that went out to Japan. And I didn't know that persecution was that bad. And the story was riveting. The ending was beautiful. I thought it was gorgeously shot. Yeah, a great, solid film.
Yeah, so this, you said it was different than a lot of Scorsese movies, and I agree. We have said that a lot, but I think we've been going off the beaten path with the Scorsese movies. Not a lot of the faves besides Goodfellas. Taxi Driver too, I suppose. I do love the switch up of tone and tempo. I feel like shows me that Martin Scorsese, he knows what he's doing, because this movie has the tone and pacing of like an old Kurosawa movie or some other like old samurai film or something. It takes on, like, it's based in Japan, and it takes on like an old Japan sort of style.
Yeah,
I feel like, and it
is it feudal? I'm not sure.
It's in the 1600s.
Okay.
So, yeah, and it's just a really deep exploration of themes that I'm impressed anyone with any amount of money got to explore. Like, you think of a Christian faith-based film.
Yeah.
They're always so clean and squeaky clean, and they're like, Jesus is the answer.
Yeah.
He's going to fix everything. That's, some down on his luck dad coaches the high school basketball team to state through some trials and tribulations, but God had his back,
right,
or whatever. Or it's like Left Behind, where it's just like, well, I don't even know what I'm watching. And this movie isn't really like a faith-based film, but I think it's a very honest exploration of faith. I think from someone, Martin Scorsese, that's probably tangled with a lot of these ideas himself over time, especially as he gets into his elder years, near death's door. I think a lot of these questions are, cogent to his life. Yeah. Cogent to everyone, but it feels personal to me. And personal to me I also, have had a tango with faith.
Same with me too.
Yep. But also personal to Martin Scorsese, where it feels like he actually understands these issues in a way that a lot of things that kind of dance around these stuff do not.
Yeah, it's almost like, I wouldn't say anti like dogma, but it's like, it's very, it shows some of the fallacy of religion as well. And it's just such a because it's kind of like Midnight Mass in that way, where it's like it shows these two opposite ends of the spectrum, and they're contrasting each other, but they're not dismissing one another either. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, so why don't we get into the performance test? This is where we talk about our favorite actors, scenes, and moments. I'm also just going to lay down kind of a summary real quick, real bird's eye view. Liam Neeson is a missionary who's disappeared during this time of persecution in Japan. They get word of him disappearing, or they actually get rumor, I think, that he is there, but he's lost the faith. Or
Either
whatever.
that or he's been executed. Yeah.
So Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver are these missionaries from Portugal that are sent to go try to reunite with Liam Neeson, find out what really happened to him, and also
Spread their faith.
reignite the mission in Japan. They arrive there. Actually, the first scene we get is Liam Neeson watching a bunch of his followers get tortured with like hot spring water as they're like tied to stakes.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a lot of natural beauty in this movie, and it's the way the mist is around. It's just a freaking striking image. And what we're seeing is gruesome and cruel. And then we move on to Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver. They start the mission. They go there. They eventually, it seems like the Inquisition is after them. They split up. Adam Driver eventually ends up imprisoned. Or not Adam Driver, Andrew Garfield. And we'll spoil silence all the way. And then eventually he reunites with Liam Neeson and finds out like what really happened, what the deal is. And that's the best part of the movie, in my opinion. Andrew Garfield, I think, is great in this movie. I heard he did I don't know if it was a lot of work, but he grew his hair and beard for a really long time.
Yeah. He had the sweet man bun.
To be in this movie, this is very Amazing Spider-Man era.
I was gonna say you're kind of Andrew Garfield-esque a little bit.
Me?
Yeah,
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
I'm a little scruffy right now too.
But you look like you're about to go spread your faith. So
yeah. I think he's great in this movie. He's doing a little accent work. He's doing.
It doesn't sound bad at all either.
No, and he's doing a really great job. There's a lot of internal turmoil.
Yeah.
With this character. I mean, there's a lot of awful stuff. This is also like Martin Scorsese's Passion of the Christ. Like,
right.
It goes deep into the torture realm. There's a scene. The reason that the two of them split up is when. So the Inquisitors go around, and one of their main tests is they have this like tablet that is a image of Jesus, and they say apostate, and you're supposed to step
on it. Yeah.
You're supposed to step on it, and they go to this village and they do it, and then they go back again, and then they say, you know what, for some of you that's not good enough, and then I think they pull out like a crucifix and say spit on it, and there's 3 guys that won't.
Yeah.
And then they end up crucified basically on the coast as they're put on these wooden crosses
in the water too.
In the water, and they're just hanging them out there as the tide pulls in.
Yeah.
And they slowly get more and more submerged. And they just leave them out there for days. I think they say one of them didn't die till like the 4th day, and he died singing a song of praise.
Yeah.
So after witnessing that, they're like, we are too dangerous to be around this village that had embraced them. Mm-hmm. We're gonna, go in our 2 different ways. The 2 missionaries, Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield, and we follow Andrew Garfield on his trek, which is really starts out very aimless. He's just kind of wandering through the countryside. And the one other thing we haven't mentioned is Kijichiro, our recurring. I'm trying to think of what the parable he reminds me of, but basically he is the.
He's Judas.
He's Judas, but he's also the character that tests the turn the other cheek.
Yes.
Forgiveness. Mm. He screws over Andrew Garfield several different times, and many people several different times, and he's always coming back saying,
asking for forgiveness.
Just listening, wanting his sins. He wants to do a confessional.
Yeah.
And he meets Andrew Garfield on the road, and then suddenly, and he tells him it's the price on your head is 300 silver to bring in a missionary. leads him to this stream where the Inquisitors capture him, and then he runs away while he grabs the coins, and Andrew Garfield ends up in prison. I just think that character, that's when I say like Martin Scorsese knows what he's talking about. That is a character that is like getting to one of the core issues of like, are you telling me that does the Christian, like Christ's forgiveness, if we're taking it as written, which have been interpreted many different ways, does that mean you can live whatever you like, and as long as you
as long as you ask for
forgiveness before you croak,
right?
Are you saved?
Right.
Do you need to live this holy focused life that Andrew Garfield's living? Yeah. Or even the villagers that are much more, into the religion?
Yeah.
Do you need to live that way? Can you just always ask for forgiveness? How does that work? It's an unanswered question, really. I mean, as far as how Andrew Garfield's character, they kind of work back around, and it seems like they end up being close friends.
Yeah, towards the end.
By the end of this story.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, at least for Andrew Garfield, the answer was you keep doing forgiveness even when it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's also with the big thing with Andrew Garfield's character is like kind of what you mentioned earlier. It's like everywhere he goes, that's when there's strife. And he's putting these people in harm's way. And if he was to denounce his faith, he could save many lives. And that's kind of another like big motivator for him as well. And his eventual apostate, which he does at the end. And yeah, it's just a lot of great themes going on, a lot of great performances. I wanted to see more Adam Driver because I thought Adam Driver was great as well. Driver could carry a whole film if he wanted to. He's not just a Star Wars guy. He does some great stuff. Wanted to see more of him. Wanted to see more Liam Neeson as well. Liam Neeson really only shows up for the first part, and then we see him in the third act.
Scorsese only uses Liam Neeson as a little treat.
Yeah, really.
I agree with that, but I also don't hold it against the film. I do like there's even in our beginnings between Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield, we see some differences in their views because when the Inquisitors first come, Andrew Garfield was like, if they ask you, apostate, spit on them. Yeah. You are forgiven. It's fine. And Adam Driver's like, fuck no, don't do that, And they don't ever come to an agreement on that. They end that scene arguing with each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of the middle of this movie is the main Inquisitor who has an interesting voice, interesting delivery.
Yes. I won't say anything bad about it. He was great.
He is great. The first moment he speaks, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then as it goes on, he does grow to you. He's just very intelligent. Like him and Andrew Garfield have a lot of deep conversations about like, you cannot bring your Christianity here. It doesn't grow here.
Yeah.
They have this one where like, this is a swamp and nothing grows here. Your Christianity seed will not take hold. And Andrew Garfield's like, no, it's because you're killing everyone.
Yeah.
That learns it.
Yeah. He comes off as like your villain of the week.
Yeah.
Kinda, but then he grows on you over time. A lot of great scenes with him.
And a lot of the middle of this movie is Andrew Garfield in this prison and him basically putting other prisoners in torturous situations and saying, Andrew Garfield, you can make this stop right now.
Yeah.
Publicly denounce it publicly. And he refuses until the very end. There's the scene where they're all supposed to apostate and they step on it. Everybody steps on it. And then they just hold one guy back and just out of nowhere he gets beheaded.
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of like, I think it was like a lesson for everybody. Like this could be your fate if you don't denounce.
And that maybe this test is too easy. We see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. If you're going to still be, practicing and we'll just step on Jesus every other day if you need to.
Yeah.
Then this is what it really is.
I just found it shocking because I just had no idea about the history of Christianity in Japan. It's really interesting. And I almost wonder to this day if there's a big community of Christians in Japan. Like, I wonder if the religion runs pretty deep there as well. It'd be kind of interesting to find out if that's still kind of the case today. Just because that history is so rooted.
And the Inquisitor is awful, but he kind of makes some good points. He's like, you're just the first sign of the empire. Like first the missionaries come, and then, here comes the army.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's ways in which he's not wrong. Granted, he should probably not be doing the horrific things he does to many people.
For sure.
But he has some valid points.
Yeah.
On his scoreboard.
Well, it's just the whole idea of like invading somebody else's land, somebody else's culture, and trying to convert, and to it's what they did with the Native Americans too, and it's just there's big issues with that for sure.
Just say what you mean.
That it all depends on you whether they are set free. If you say just one single word, show them, deny your faith.
So what if I refuse? You kill me? The blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. Just like the priests you slaughtered in Omura and Nagasaki.
We learned from our mistake. Killing the priests and killing the peasants makes it worse. If they can die for their God, they think it only makes them stronger.
And I love once we get Liam Neeson again, because Liam Neeson is here, he's alive, he's left the faith behind and has become more involved into Buddhism, it seems like, or is at least reads the text with interest and is willing to, take out from what he needs. I mean, I just really loved their sit down when Andrew Garfield and Liam Neeson started talking about the faith, because specifically the part where Liam Neeson is like, do you know what they call the Son of God here? Because when the missionaries came, they asked what the Son of God was. And they said, whatever word, I forget the word. And then he's like, he points to the sun. That's the Son of God. In the Bible, the Son of God rises on the third day. In Japan, the Son of God rises every single day. Like the language area, and like that they are not practicing what we called Catholicism or true Christianity. Yeah. Andrew Garfield's like, no. They had faith. They had passion. They knew what they were doing, and just once again, the question of like intention versus dogma.
Rodriguez, please listen. The Japanese only believe in their distortion of our gospel, so they did not believe at all. They never believed.
How can you say that? From the time of St. Francis Xavier through your own time, there were hundreds of thousands of converts here.
Converts?
Converts, yes.
Francis Xavier came here to teach the Japanese about the Son of God, but first he had to ask how to refer to God. Dainichi, he was told. And shall I show you their Dainichi? Behold, there is the Son of God, God's only begotten Son. In the scriptures, Jesus rose on the third day. In Japan, the Son of God rises daily. The Japanese cannot think of an existence beyond the realm of nature. For them, nothing transcends the human.
No.
They can't conceive of our idea of the Christian God.
You're wrong. You're wrong. They worship God. God, our Lord. They praise the name of Deus.
That's just another word for a God they never knew.
I saw men die.
I did too.
For Deus, on fire with their faith.
Your martyrs may have been on fire, Father, but it was not with the Christian faith.
I saw them die. I saw them die. They did not die for nothing.
Well, I know with Christianity, it's kind of the idea that this faith in God is within all man, and it's like it truly comes out when you have faith, and so it's that kind of idea, and that is really interesting. This is my first viewing. I'm having kind of a hard time like remembering every single thing, but yeah, these are some great points.
And when I told you to watch this movie, I said there was one moment that kind of like earns the previous 2 hours, because it is a lot of like kind of torture porn. Maybe not torture porn is the word, but it's grueling.
I'm trying to remember what scene you're referring to, because I thought at first it was a beheading scene, but I'll let you tell me, because I think it's
not an easy watch, and at least for me, I was like, this is okay, but what are we getting at here? And it's the moment where he does apostate, and we just hear God's voice.
There is something more important than the judgment of the church. You are now going to fulfill the most painful act of love that has ever been performed.
It's only a formality. Just a formality.
Come ahead now. It's all right. Step on me. I understand your pain. I was born into this world to share men's pain. I carried this cross for your pain. Your life is with me now. Step.
I don't know. I find something about that incredibly beautiful, because also along the way, we're wondering if Andrew Garfield, is particularly when he first gets picked up after he's been like running around the wild for a while, we're like, he's just kind of losing it.
Yeah.
Like, is he insane?
And so I'm thinking, like, subconsciously, this is what he's believing God is telling him.
Yeah, this is him like rectifying his choice to make it okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But you could also read it as, a true message from the message, straight from the mouth of God, which is not really something you see in a New Testament times.
Right.
God kind of stops speaking directly to people in the Old Testament.
Yes. And then, like, in that scene, you just hear the groans of people while their heads are in the ground.
Because he's surrounded, we didn't mention, but he's surrounded by, they were hanging people upside down and then cut a slit in their neck just the tiniest drop of blood would drop out so they wouldn't pass out, but they would still like be alive as they slowly bleed out.
Mm-hmm. And while their heads are in a pit with a board put around it, so they're totally in complete darkness.
Yeah.
It's awful. The stuff that we do to each other is just, it's incredible. Yeah.
And he can save all these people. He can end all their suffering. And Liam Neeson, you're about to commit the greatest act of mercy that like one could possibly do.
Yeah.
Go do it. And it's like, does he? Is that keeping the faith? Is keeping the faith, putting all these people's lives at risk for the sake of, like, Liam Neeson also says, like, they're not dying for Jesus, they're dying for you.
For you, yeah.
And Andrew Garfield, over the course of the movie, kind of has a Messiah complex for a lot of it.
Sure.
And that's when he finally, like, sheds it. And he's like, I can save these people, and that's my job,
For sure.
And I think it's beautiful. And then we go into this epilogue where they're kind of living in Japan, Liam Neeson, and then later he passes away and Andrew Garfield's like the main guy, and they're like the snitches. They're the like...
Yeah, so basically he would take... Well, I guess his story also parallels with the story of Paul from the Bible as well. Paul was a man who, before he got his faith, he was persecuting Christians, and he was helping an Inquisition, similar, I think, like a Roman Inquisition, to execute Christians. And so I kind of saw parallels between Paul's story and then Andrew Garfield's as well.
And also, I believe in the Bible, doesn't Paul deny Christ 3 times during the night of the crucifixion? And then a rooster crows 3 times.
Judas. No. It wasn't Paul. That was a disciple of Christ during that time. Paul came after the disciples.
There was some disciple.
Yeah.
And then when... Peter,
I believe.
When Andrew Garfield steps on Christ, you hear a rooster crow 3 times.
Yeah.
And then they go on to they inspect all the imported goods for like hidden Christian artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff is illicit, and it's left pretty ambiguous for a while whether Andrew Garfield, especially even for Liam Neeson, when you meet him, you can't tell whether he's dropped the faith completely, if he's saying what he needs to say to survive.
Yeah.
Like where they really stand on things.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to ask, because it seemed to me that he was completely faithless. But yeah, it was a little ambiguous. But
to me, it seemed more like, Liam Neeson might have been faithless, but also during that scene, they do hide. Like, they do take one cross, and Liam Neeson is the one who does it.
Yes, and then I think also, too, he said something about our Lord.
Yeah.
And then Andrew Garfield comments on that. He's like, oh, you said our Lord. And then Liam is like, he kind of brushes it off. And then, I think that was the last we saw of him. So Andrew Garfield's character, towards the end, he ends up getting property, and he gets a wife from some guy that died, and so he ends up like living the rest of his life in Japan. And it was a great scene at the end where they're having the funeral for him when he passes, and the wife comes over, and she's like putting some type of blessing into his casket, and then she kind of slips like a crucifix into his hand, and he's buried with that. Yeah, it's a great scene, very beautiful.
Yeah, he gets like I guess a Buddhist burial, which involves being put in a barrel and lit on fire, and the camera like just kind of cuts into the barrel straight down to his hands, and we see the little
crucifix,
inch-tall crucifix. Would it have been better if it was left ambiguous, or do you like the answer? Because I didn't remember what it was.
I liked it because it kind of felt to me that he was still seeding his faith, even when he denounced. And like, because you have that scene with the guy, the Judas character, where the guy comes back and he's asking for forgiveness again. He wants to do his confessional. And there's that whole scene, and that kind of reignites Andrew Garfield's faith again. And then it's like, I feel like as time went on, he was still seeding that faith, and that faith was seeded to his wife as well. And that's why, I mean, it's just like, that was sentimental to him, but then it's also, too, it's like, if she didn't care for the faith, she wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? So it just kind of felt like those seeds were still being planted even after his death.
Yeah, there's also the scene with Kijichiro, the Judas character. He ends honorably.
Yes.
They are being inspected for Christian imagery, and they find something in one of Kijichiro's items. And he's like, no, I couldn't possibly have gotten that from Andrew Garfield. Yeah. I won at gambling.
Right.
I didn't even know that was in there. Which I don't think they buy, and they take him away, presumably to something awful.
Yeah, we didn't buy that either. It was like, yeah, you definitely, that was yours, bro.
Yeah, so it's just a great inspection of faith. And I love it. Shall we move along to It's an Art Bro?
What's this?
It's an art project.
Okay, I like it. Picasso. Yeah, that way.
This movie's shot in Taiwan, not in Japan. But hot damn, is like every natural place so beautiful.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very beautiful. It's very still. There's a purposeful like lack of soundtrack for composition. Not a lot of music.
That's why the movie is called Silence.
Not to be confused with A Quiet Place with the aliens. They'll hear your scream.
That would have been a great title for this film too. A Quiet Place.
Quiet Place.
Yeah.
What if John Krasinski was Adam Driver's character?
Wow, he would look at the camera with his gym face.
They're crucifying them. Talk about a bad boss.
He plays a prank on the Inquisitor. Yeah, like you were saying earlier, it really captures that feeling of like old Kurosawa movies, and just the whole Japanese samurai kind of vibe. It's awesome. It looks incredible. I think this might be Martin Scorsese's best looking film. It's funny because I watched The Irishman the other day, and I was like, this film looks awesome too. Looks really good. It's kind of up in the air. I think Killers of the Flower Moon also looks really great. But, I mean, those are relatively new, so they should look great. But Silence is like, it's got that natural beauty that is something that's completely lacking in most of Scorsese's films, because they're all like urban jungle type stuff. So,
yeah, the only thing it got nominated for as far as Oscars was cinematography.
Did Andrew Garfield get nominated for an Oscar for this?
Because
I feel like he should have. He was really great.
If you're on the wiki, maybe check it out. It's either only one that got nominated or only thing that won. It's one of those. But yeah, hella beautiful.
I'm not seeing any accolades, so I'm guessing not. Interesting.
Also, like, can Martin Scorsese win an Oscar? I mean, he did, but for The Departed? For The Departed.
Yeah, possibly his weakest film, or one of them.
One of them, for sure. I think he made, like, 7 better movies than like, last 20 years.
I was reading Letterboxd. People loved The Departed. People really love that film. I might have to watch it again, because that's one of the ones I haven't watched too many times, but wasn't my fave, for sure. It's just a beautiful looking film. The soundtrack, like we were kind of saying, it's pretty quiet. It's very subtle, and I mean, but yeah, it works in service, I think.
Biggest soundtrack is often just crickets chirping in the background or like waves sloshing against a ocean shore. I like the combination of natural beauty, human cruelty. That's like this whole movie.
Yeah.
It's like we're the cancer of this earth, you know?
For sure. Shall we move on to, hey, what are you trying to say?
You know, I'm just wondering about the color. It seems kind of dark. I wonder if I could have a lighter color, maybe a light blue or something.
Oh, so what are you saying? You saying I don't know colors? I don't know anything about suits? What, I just came off the street, I was some unemployed guy begging for money on the corner, and they threw me in here to try to fit people? You don't think I know anything about suits? Oh, no, let's go that color? Is that what you're saying?
You think the dark then?
Yeah, I think the dark.
Okay,
Well,
we'll go with the dark.
I feel like we've kind of stepped on this segment throughout the entire review. Do you have a problem with fast forwarding this, or do you have more things you want to say about, hey?
Well, I think another big one is just like the aspect of like colonization. I think
True.
like what you were saying with, it's just like, yeah, first the missionaries, then the armies come in. And there's obviously more nefarious works at place in trying to convert these people to turn against their government. Yeah. And that's usually the case in most colonizations. They did this with the Native Americans. They did this in Africa, in the Middle East. This just happens. And it just points towards human nature, our desire to conquer, and then also the savagery behind these acts of like, we don't want people to, or just the lack of understanding of somebody's faith, or just like the ideas like people how am I trying to say this? We have issues with people who think differently than us. Yeah. And that's like I think that's one of the biggest downfalls and pitfalls of humanity in general. It's just our lack of understanding and our ignorance and our desire to stay complicit and to stay in one spot, you know. So it says a lot about humanity.
Was this movie too woke?
Oh, absolutely. Just all the black characters in this film really irked me.
Trying to think of one. Kind of piggybacking on your point, the priests really kind of talk down on the people, especially when they come there. They're like kind of always describe them as like dirty and animalistic, but it's funny because that's also how the Inquisitor talks about the farmers. It's like the people in power don't
don't care for the common man either.
Really qualify them as humans. They're like these. He's literally like those idiot farmers. They'd follow anyone. Like you could tell them anything.
Yeah.
And the priests aren't that much, but they are kind of like these poor souls.
Well, it's the God complex again, where it's like, I'm put here on this earth to save them. Yeah. And that's like...
It makes you other.
Yeah.
It makes you better and not just another human.
Right.
Helping another human.
It's not very Christ-like, I must say.
Exactly. WWJD. What if they'd consider that during this movie?
I think things would have went a lot smoother.
Can we move along?
Let's do it.
Let's let the hate flow through you. This is where we air out our annoyances and our complaints.
Good. Use your aggressive feelings, boy. Let the hate flow through you.
I will say, I think some of the middle part, while good, is a little repetitive. It's a lot of villagers get tortured. Andrew Garfield looks tortured as he watches the villagers get tortured.
Or even more so in the beginning, Andrew Garfield hiding.
Yeah.
And trying to go to one place to the next, that kind of thing.
It seems like what takes the like almost 40, 50 minutes, that first like village piece could have been like 15 minutes.
Yeah. They spent a lot of time in that little hut where it was just him and Adam Driver. They spent a lot of time in there.
I do like that this movie takes a slower pace, but there's a part, it just feels like there's a part just before. It's when Adam Driver is running into the ocean. That's like and they're pushing people like tied up in barrels.
Oh yeah.
Into the ocean.
That's the part where Adam Driver dies. Yeah.
It's just like a bridge too far. It's for me like not that I've turned on this movie, but it's just like I could have used like one less.
Yeah, for sure.
Of these, because it's the same lesson every time. It's Andrew Garfield being like, well, you could maybe end this if you just stop.
But you kind of need that, where it's like you need that scene where he's like conflicted by his faith and he stands firm in it, and then you have that scene when he breaks I think you need that.
But we have the one where he stands firm in it like 9 times. And then we have the one where he breaks once.
Yeah.
You know? Like we could have done 1 or 2 less, maybe.
The movie is too fucking long.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. And you got to cut out something. And it's like 1, 3 less Japanese villagers getting murdered. We could have done, we would have got the point.
Yeah, cut it down a little bit. But which is it leads into a larger subject of Martin Scorsese films in general.
Yeah, they've only gotten longer. He just put out one that's a whole hour longer than this movie.
It's true. But I loved every second of it. So that's the thing. It's either it works or it doesn't.
Make a miniseries, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah. Tarantino did it with Hateful Eight.
My butt don't need to be this numb.
Make it episodic, please.
I turned Killers of the Flower Moon into a 2-parter myself because I was not going to do that.
Or at least put an intermission in it or something. Someplace we can pause and,
You can just fast forward to when Leo's getting spanked.
Yeah, that was my favorite scene in the movie.
That's the only one I've watched on YouTube. No, the one I always rewatch, and I wish people knew this reference because I want to say it without sounding like really mean, but it's when Brendan Fraser's yelling at him. He's like, "I'm trying to save you, idiot boy."
Yeah, you stupid boy. That's a great scene.
He doesn't understand that. I love that they keep telling him how stupid he is. He's like, "Do you understand you're trying to hang yourself with the rope?" He doesn't understand that.
And then you just got Leo going, "I'm not a dim man."
No, I wouldn't want him to rot in prison.
I'm strong.
All right. Let's answer our final question. Is this a perfect movie?
You lost a baby brother. Perfect in every way.
I had a baby brother. I had a little baby brother. And he was perfect. Perfect in every way.
Well, this is kind of it might be a little bit difficult. I think it's really good. And I think it's a very well-made film. And it's gorgeous, and the dialogue is rich, and it sucks you in, and you feel for these characters. As far as Martin Scorsese films go, it's not his best work, but it definitely he's treading different water.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the first time he's made a religious film. He did The Last Temptation of Jesus Christ, starring Willem Dafoe. Mm-hmm. I have not seen that movie. I probably will try to watch it eventually. But he's diving into religion, which is a polarizing subject, and it needs to be talked about just because it's so rooted in our culture in general, and there's a lot of problems with it, and then there's the flip side where it's like we want people to be able to do what they want to do. If you want to follow faith and if you want to have faith, that's fine. You know what I mean? So it leads into these larger subjects, which are important to talk about, and I appreciate him for that, and I appreciate him for trying something different, and I think it's a fine film.
I like it a lot. For all those reasons you've already touched on. I would want to put it on the perfect movie list if you're willing to do that.
The question is, would you watch it again?
I mean, I've already watched it twice.
Would you watch it again if it wasn't in service of this podcast?
Probably. That's a tough question to ask, I think, for this type of movie because it's not meant to be an easy watch, something you just flip on and are like, whoa, this is, so it's kind of unfair to movies that are difficult for that question, I think. And this is delving into, it's difficult to watch because of all the torture and the violence and it's difficult to watch because it's it's not a fun time. This is not a date night movie.
No, not at all.
But
I think again it speaks to Martin Scorsese as a director, just the complexity of it and just how much I'm sure if you watch this again, you'd find different things to kind of break apart, and just the work that went into this had to be astounding.
It looks amazing, and it's a $40 million budget, which for a location shoot, I feel like is a really low amount of money. Not that there's a ton of effects needed for this type of movie.
For today's standards, for sure.
It's pretty cheap considering the stars at hand, and just it's so beautiful, and I am so impressed with just how expertly he's gone into a completely different tone and style of film.
Yeah.
From what a lot of people would know him for.
Well, I mean, I got a little teary-eyed on the scene where he denounced his faith.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a beautiful scene. And yeah. And I think when we talk about what's a perfect movie and it changing our chemistry,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's really important in, you know, that deciding factor. So
I think the last like 45 minutes of this movie really, especially for people like us that are very attuned to a faith and maybe even land on different spectrums of where we've landed on faith, and that it affects us both equally. Like the last 45 minutes of this movie just like ripped me apart, like a few different ways.
yeah. Well, it's funny because I mentioned Midnight Mass earlier, and Midnight Mass did the same thing for me, where it was like I grew up religious, and so I know what that pulling, like the two sides pulling at you feels like.
Yeah.
And that's powerful to me, and it makes me feel. And so I think if you agree, we should put it on the list because I think it's a beautiful film, and I think it's very underrated as far as Martin Scorsese's catalog goes.
Boom. Let's do it. Silence. It's on the perfect movie list. Should we move on to Andrew Garfield's next hit movie, Tick Tick Boom Boom, where he plays a Broadway, I believe a Broadway director.
Wasn't he in Social Network?
Yeah, he is a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. He was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, the movie with the web hand?
Yes. This is the third time we mentioned this. It's still hilarious.
We've only watched 4 movies, and one of them is Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Now we have to review it out of spite.
We should. Let's explore the Spider-Verse.
I think Andrew Garfield is a fine actor, and I think this movie really showed his acting prowess. And I would like to see him in more roles like this. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. He's really good. Not a person that you expect when you turn on a Martin Scorsese movie.
I mean, I haven't seen him in Hacksaw Ridge, so that might be...
Oh, Hacksaw Ridge is not, from what I remember.
It's not a good one.
It's closer. It's also a very faithy movie.
Oh, yeah, because he's like
the whole thing is
medic.
like, I'm a Christian that won't kill. And it's a Mel Gibson movie, I believe, and it is not...
God.
We're leaning back towards the bad end of faith.
We should review Mel Gibson films eventually. Apocalypto is pretty good. Passion of the Christ is like, it's a wild film. Let's say that.
Should we review his voicemail he left for his ex-wife?
Mel Gibson would be a great character study, I would say. Maybe down the line, we'll see.
Well, Mel Gibson and Gary Busey.
I want to see a Gary Busey
big Predator
directorial debut.
Predator 2 handshake, because Gary Busey's in it.
You son of a bitch.
What did you say? What was the clip you sent me? Buttered toast.
Oh, yeah.
Buttered
Let's talk about
sausage.
buttered sausage. I featured that in our Last of Us 2 video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you haven't seen Silence, definitely recommend. It's a slow burn, but it is worth the watch, I would say. Beautiful film by Martin Scorsese. And that concludes our Martin Scorsese month. I think this was one of our best showcases. I think these films were great to talk about. I think we had a lot to break apart. Shout out to Martin Scorsese. Probably one of the best to ever do it. He's definitely up there. And he's continuing to create groundbreaking films to this day, and he should get all the flowers.
Speaking of Predator handshakes, Martin Scorsese, George Miller, being old and making kick-ass movies, Predator handshake.
You son of a bitch.
All right, I'm late to somewhere, so I gotta get out of here. Let's go!
Timberwolves!
I don't work around in tight clothes. I stay at home for most of the time.
Public, and it's a embarrassment to me. You look like a on heat. And if you get raped by a pack, it'll be your fault. All right? Because you provoked it. You are provocatively dressed all the time with your fake boobs you feel you have to show off in tight outfits and tight pants and stuff. You see your from behind. And that green thing today was enough. That's provocative. Okay?